Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ModelCheck configuration and Windchill Gatekeeper demonstration.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ModelCheck configuration and Windchill Gatekeeper demonstration presented to you by PDSVISION. For this presentation, we're basically going to go through and talk about the configuration of ModelCheck and how to use ModelCheck as the gatekeeper when working with the two systems together. So I'll do a brief introduction. Of course, then I'll go into a demonstration and then just thank you for watching the video and give you additional information from us. So my name is Michael Wimberly. I am the manager of CAD services at PDSVISION. I've been with PDSVISION for over 9 years now. I've worked with PTC products for over 20 years now, and I am a PTC certified trainer and implementer for Creo and Windchill. We are PDSVISION, formerly Boundary Systems. As of 2022 is when we changed our name. We are a technology leader. We are PTC's first reseller and preferred service provider. We also offer a software solution developer for design and manufacturing. Some of our capabilities are consulting, implementation services, professional training, cloud services, as well as help desk. Now, the evolution of Boundary Systems and PDSVISION. So Boundary Systems was started in 2006. PDSVISION was started in 2008. In 2009, Boundary Systems became a preferred Windchill partner with PTC. We then expanded into South Africa in 2014. In 2018 is when we became a part of PDSVISION. In 2020, PDSVISION also acquired Net out of Germany. And then, as I just stated, 2022 is when we officially changed our name from Boundary Systems to PDSVISION. Same services and everything, just now under a new name. Now, in addition to partnering with PTC and all their suite of software, we also have partnered with other software companies to also offer their services and their solutions as well. For more information on any of those, definitely access our website at pdsvision.us. And I'll show you that later as well. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into the demonstration. All right, so inside of Creo, we have our models up, and there are several configurations that we can go through and look at. So the first thing we want to look at is just simply the basic setup of ModelCheck. So inside of your Creo session, if you go into File Options, and then under Options, you can go to the Environment area. In the Environment area, there's a section for ModelCheck settings. When you select on that, it will then give you the different settings or the different files that you can go through and use. I'll show you where these are on your, or where you can locate them on your hard drive as well. So inside of here, we can go through and specify, whether or not we're going to even enable ModelCheck. There's a few things down here. So ModelCheck is enabled, yes. And then this is also important where you have save ModelCheck pre. Now, what they're asking is, do you want to save prior to running ModelCheck or after you run ModelCheck? If you say yes, it runs ModelCheck before the save option. If you say no, then it will run ModelCheck and then save. So, and that can also make a difference when we get into the gatekeeper as well. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. So this is just the initial configuration. What you'll also see is in ModelCheck, there will be several files that are written, and all we're doing here is specifying directories where those different reports will be written to. Inside of here, we have conditional settings. So we have a couple of files inside of here. Now, with these conditional settings, you're simply going in and specifying, based on whatever attribute you've set up, which files to run for ModelCheck. So you can go and have it based on, whether it's a part file, whether it's an assembly file, whether it's a drawing, whether it's a sheet metal file. There's a lot of different attributes that we can go through and set up that will actually allow us to go through and specify which ModelCheck files to run. Those ModelCheck files that I'm referring to are down here in the configuration settings area. So you have check files, start files, constant files, and then status files. Those, once again, go with the different columns inside of here. So when I expand check files, I then can see both the demo and the simple are located here. Each one will run different checks based on what we've set up. So if I select on the demo, you can see once again the dialog area where you have the columns based on how you're going to run ModelCheck. So are you running it interactively, which means you're going in, you're manually telling ModelCheck when to run? Are you running it in batch mode? So do you have a bunch of files that you need to run ModelCheck in? You can stick them in a directory somewhere and then have ModelCheck run on those files in that particular directory. You can do a regeneration where after every regeneration, it will go through and run ModelCheck and or save. So we can go through and actually go and have ModelCheck run after every time you save the model. And the metrics are just simply reports that are done. It's just recording information, and actually later versions of Creo, I think that actually begins to go away, or they change the way they're doing it. Now, real quickly looking at this, the way it works is for the column that you want to go through and use, you simply can go through and specify whether or not to run that, yes to run it, no, not to run it. E means that if we find this, report it as an error, or W, if it finds it, report this as a warning. Now, we'll get into those in just a moment because those will make a difference when we actually get into our gatekeeper as well. So we can say yes, and it just goes in and shows it. It doesn't actually harm anything. It just lets you know the information based on what it found based on that particular run. So as I said, for each one, we can go through and specify, okay, for interactive mode, I want these particular checks to be done. For regen mode, I want these particular checks to be done. When it's saved, I want these things done. And you can also go through and specify, how it's reporting at each of those levels. So it may be an error here, it may be a warning there. So we can go through and set those things up. So a couple of examples here. There we have with geom checks. The checkbox on the left side specifies that it is checking for that. So although I may set this, if I don't select that checkbox, it's not running it. So this checkbox tells it what to run. So it's not running everything in here, just the items that we have listed. So here we have, once again, with the assembly for components, if it has suppressed components, basically go through for interactive mode, it can report it as an error, or we can go through and just simply have a warning that says, hey, these actually have suppressed components in there, and it's just letting you know that they're there. Same thing with geom checks. No. So what you'll see is that with a lot of these things, you may want to run them as you're regenerating. For example, dependencies. Here's a good one. I don't necessarily need to run it. I do have it as an error at the save mode, but this may be something that when I'm regenerating my model or I'm running interactively, I need it to tell me that I have a chamfer that has a child, and I want it to report it to me as an error. And maybe I do want to do it as a save as well. I've just thought about it. Because depending upon the mode that we're telling ModelCheck to run in will determine on the gatekeeper. And once again, I'll talk about it in just a moment. But we want these to be errors because we should not have any chamfers that have children. Drafts should not have children unless they're like rounds or something like that. So this one is actually reported as a warning versus an error. But then we have rounds. Rounds should not have children either. So we can go through and specify those in drawings. Multiple settings inside of drawings as well. As I said, we can report things as errors, or we can report them as warnings, or just say yes where it goes through and actually checks it, but it's not an error or warning, and I'll show you where that information is located as well. Family tables, features, so you can go through here and specify what it is that you want to go through and run in. So there's a lot of information. Then you also have, your geom checks. What type of geom checks is it running? And then how it's going through and looking at those. And then just general information that you want to find out. The overall file size. Yeah, I want it reported. So just show me that information. I want to know how big this file is. Of course, that's not a warning or an error. It's just information. So we're just going to say yes when it does that. So that's the demo checks. We can have one for simple checks. I want to say changes. No, I don't want to save anything. Simple checks, same thing. I can go in and deselect as many of these things as I want to, because I'm only searching for certain things. If none of these fit, create a new file. Then we have start files. With the start files, we can now go through and specify additional information. For example, we have parameters or layers or any of those things that we want to go through and look at. So for example, I have default layers, or I have layers that need to exist in my different files. Part layers, you can see they're labeled part layers and assembly layers, as well as drawing layers. And these are what they should be labeled. So these are axes, blank, and it should be the datum axis. So it's going in and checking the status of those. If they're there, great, it should be blanked. So it's going to go through and report both, if the layer exists and whether or not it's blanked. So all these are in here. And once again, we can go through and specify that. Additional notes. This is good for parameters. A lot of companies, when they transition from, just maybe a server that's holding their data into Windchill, where there's some attributes that they want to be displayed inside of Windchill that aren't necessarily either in the models or designated properly in the models to be shown in Windchill. We can use this to go through and do that. So we can run it once again in one of the three modes: interactive, regen, or save. Or before we put these files into Windchill, we can put them into a folder and run a batch model check. And then that way it goes in and reads all the files in that directory, and we can have it do the autocorrect. So it'll go through and automatically add the layers, parameters, whatever is necessary for it to go through and update. So once again, each one of these will go through and specify what information you want to go through and use. So it's quite a bit, and you can see it gets even specific into the sheet metal. Here's the tables to read inside of there. So those are in there as well as far as start files. Then we have our constant files, which are basically when we go in and we start doing one of the things that we looked at in the check file was when we came down here a little bit further and we started looking at some of the geom checks. Some of those values will be based on what we have inside of here. When we're going to specify, okay, a short edge or the accuracy or whatever, all those things can be set in these different files. So this is one is based on inch. We've got another one based on millimeters. And then we also have status files. What that simply is, it's going in and showing, the maximum number of errors, maximum number of warnings that we're going to go through and specify, or that we're saying are acceptable. So in order for the status of this model to be green, then the maximum number of errors that we can have are 5. The maximum number of warnings that we can have are 10. For yellow, 8 and 15. Anything beyond that, basically, of course, the model is now red level, which basically means it's not a conforming model or layer. All right, so those are the main things. Text files, we have to get into that a little bit more later on because those can actually help when we're doing parameters as well, or even going in and reading notes. So that's a little bit more advanced functionality, but we can get into that, another time. But those are the main things that you're looking at is, the initial file. There's the modes there that you want to go through and use. So you can have that in here. So this is actually specifying as well. So when I was in the configuration area and I was specifying, interactive, batch, regen, or save, over here, when we have mode to run, that's what we're telling it which ones we're going to allow to run. So if I say no to interactive mode, if I hit interactive inside of Creo, it won't run anything. So we're telling it we're allowing these to be run at these different modes. So this is also important when we're going and setting things up. All right, so those are your files for ModelCheck. So now when we actually come through and rerun ModelCheck, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to take this RAM and I'm going to go ahead and open it up. And I'm just going to do a Control-G to regenerate. And once again, it goes through and shows me that information. Now, if I want to know what settings were actually run when I ran this ModelCheck, that's what this overview is for. When I expand this, it will go through and show me that configuration that was actually run. And of course, the actual date and time that it was run, because that'll be important as well, and the mode that it was run in. So this will let you see what the actual checks are being done in your model. And then of course, we've seen this before where we have all the different items listed. Around has a child, buried features, edge references, any of those things. So of course, we can now go through and resolve any of those issues that we have. Same thing here. When I go back to the assembly, and same thing, regenerate. It runs ModelCheck. It goes in. There's no errors. One warning that says we have a suppressed component or components. This one actually just shows one. Same thing. There's the overview of the information, and any of the items that we had that simply had yes next to it, those are now being displayed down here. We want to know the total number of parts. There's a total number of 10 parts. How many of them are in unique names? All of them are unique names. So it's letting us know that there are a total of 10 parts and all of them are unique. If I was to come in here now and take this lug and basically pattern that lug, the same thing, regenerate again. Now that information updates, and now there's 14, and there's still, once again, 10 unique items in there. So this is, once again, as we're going in and working, these are the things that we can go and use and update. And as you're doing your updates, you can go through and just rerun ModelCheck to make sure everything is run appropriately. So as I said, those are some of the key components inside of Creo when running ModelCheck. So as I said, under file options, environment, ModelCheck settings, there you have it. And as I said, the way to go in and configure what's being run is when you're going to go through and specify these different files. So if it is this particular file, then run this. And I'll actually show you that in just a second. So one other key thing, didn't mean to get out of it completely, is where does Creo read the ModelCheck files from? When you go into Configuration Editor, there is a ModelCheck directory. That is where those files will be located. So for me, it's under my name, document, boundary, and then ModelCheck setup. That's where those files are going to be located. So if I come over and I actually open up a folder, go into boundary, ModelCheck setup, there's the files. Now inside of here is the configuration directory. When you open that up, that's now where you see those different items that we were just looking at. That's where they're located. So technically, we can still edit these outside of Creo by just going in and open it up. I open them up in Notepad++. And there we have it. So we can edit it here, and Creo will reread this file when it runs ModelCheck. So once I edit it here, it'll be updated. Or if I have this open and I edit in Creo, this file will update. So that's where those are. We come back to the check file, start file. Let's see what this one is. Yeah. So this is once again where we're looking at the parameters that we're going in and setting up. So as I said, everything that we just saw inside of Creo is also available in these files here. So it is once again your directory that has everything in there. Now, for those startup files, sorry, those are this one here. Nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry. I meant this one. Yep. So this one is the one that's running. So as you can see, there's a few of them that are commented out, but the way it's set up is if basically this is not using the start part, go in and use the configuration check. Is going to be simple checks. Start is going to be no start, and then the constant is going to be inch. If it is this value, then use these. If it's this, then use these. If it doesn't fit any of the items that I have selected, then use this configuration. So that will be the default configuration that it uses if whatever you've specified up top, it doesn't fit any of those. So basically, this is the fallback. And this is probably the one that you want to have, you know, that has at least a lot of your core checks in there. Up here, you may be more specific because you may be looking at sheet metal or something like that that you may want to go through and have specific checks for sheet metal or drawings or things like that. So, and this can be an extremely long list or it can be a short list. You can basically have one line and then the else statement. You know, if it's not this, then always be this. So all depends on how much detail you want to go through and put in there. All right, now, with that being said, I will now go into the Windchill piece of it. So with Windchill, I'm going to go ahead and open up my browser inside of Creo. And from here, now what we're looking at is the ModelCheck settings. So we're going to go into preferences. Now, these preferences can be set at the product level, at the organization level, or of course at the site level for us to go through and use. The higher you set it, the more it propagates. So if I'm just looking to go in and control something in a specific product or have this run in a specific product, then I can set it in that specific product versus doing the organization. Right. So what I'm simply doing is going to my preferences. So for those that aren't familiar with this, when you go into Windchill and you browse and you're into a product, if you go into utilities, and once again, this is the setting for all of them where whether you're at the product or core site level, it's still underneath utilities preferences. I'm sorry, underneath utilities. And yes, and now preference manager. Here we have it. Now, all I'm going to do is go in and check for or search for ModelCheck. When I search for ModelCheck, I now get this information. So there is this configuration that is in here that is based on life cycles. So this will actually run specific ModelCheck settings based on the life cycle that it's associated with. I personally have not done that as far as use life cycles to control ModelCheck, but it looks like there's quite a few options. You can see there's some out of the box ones that are there that are set up. But the ones that you are focused on is for Windchill is ModelCheck active. So right now, ModelCheck mode is basically disabled. So if we come in here, right click, set preference, we're going to go through and now have a couple of options. So we're going to have interactive, we're going to have regenerate explicit, regenerate implicit, regenerate always, save, or batch. What it's simply looking at is how did you run ModelCheck before you checked it in? That information in your model is, I'm in an assembly, is in one of your parameters. So when you go into parameters, when you run ModelCheck, it automatically creates a parameter called MC mode, ModelCheck mode. That lines up with this. So what is the last mode of ModelCheck that should be run before it's checked in? If you're using the save, then of course that's what this should be set to, is save, so that the last time it was run, it was in save mode. So this will basically update to save, so I can check that in. So I can go in and set that preference, once again, to whatever I want. I will go ahead and say save. Now, once again, if this is something you want to lock down, as an administrator, we can go through and lock that down. So now that's going to be saved. Now, we're also going to go through and specify how many errors are we going to allow before to be checked in. So right now we've set it to 0. Once again, that value is here. MC errors, it will go through and read. If this is anything other than 0, it will give us an error whenever we go and try to check it in. And then down here, we have number of hours. What that is specifying is how long has it been since ModelCheck was run when you're trying to check it in. This is saying that ModelCheck needed to be run within 24 hours of you trying to check this file in. And once again, that is, where'd it go? So the update, that's the date. Oh, that's the update. There it is, ModelCheck. So within 24 hours of this is when it needs to be checked in. If it's beyond that time, once again, you're going to get an error. And you're going to have to run ModelCheck again to get it within that time lapse that is necessary. And then, of course, you simply have ModelCheck validation. Is basically saying, of all the stuff that we're setting, are we actually going to go in and use this for validation? So we can set all of this, but if this is set to no, it's not going to stop anything. So when we set that to yes, now all of these kick in. Save mode, can't have any errors, and ModelCheck needed to be run within the last 24 hours. So that's where the gatekeeper comes in. It's a combination of basically these 4 settings inside of our preferences inside of Windchill. And as I was just showing you, those are driven by parameters that are created inside of your model when you run ModelCheck. So that's the overall configuration for ModelCheck inside of Creo, as well as the gatekeeper functionality inside of Windchill. So I hope that gives you the information that you needed to continue to help you implement Windchill and ModelCheck together. So If you want to learn more about ModelCheck, feel free to contact us. You know, all of our webinar presenters are certified trainers, and of course, we can dig into each topic in as much depth as we need to. Of course, we have training available. Still with COVID, we have virtual. We still have in-center, and you know, if your company allows it, we can actually come on site to do training as well. If you want to know about our training schedule or any upcoming webinars that we're holding, visit our website at pdsvision.us. Once again, if you want to contact me directly, you can reach out to me at mwimberly@pdsvision.us. If you have questions for sales, you can, of course, go to sales@pdsvision.us. Definitely visit our PDS Vision website, as well as our YouTube channel for this webinar, and of course, other webinars that we've gone through and had. And if you do have any suggestions for additional webinars, feel free to reach out to myself as well as sales, so we can see if we can get those on the schedule to be presented. So once again, I want to thank you for your time. And as I said, I hope that what I have presented to you will help you to be able to implement ModelCheck a little bit more, as well as work with it inside of Windchill. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.